You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RBLR Lightning. And guys, it's the most wonderful time of the year. The NHL playoffs are officially back, getting underway tonight as of this recording, but the Lightning will be getting set to take the ice on Tuesday. As always, my name is Jake Ricker. Alongside me, it's Joe Zamataro, Matt Gannon. Guys, welcome back to the show. Are you excited for the postseason?
Pumped.
Come on, Joe, you can do better than that. That didn't sound too exciting.
I'm excited. I can't wait. Thank God the regular season is over. Let's go, boys. Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about.
There we go. That's the energy we're looking for, Joe. I am stoked. I am pumped, as Joe said. I am nervous, but overall, I'm very excited. It is the most wonderful time of the year. Even if your team is not in it, there is nothing like playoff hockey. If you're just an outsider fan, it is something else. So I'm super excited. We got some good games coming up today, but even better games coming up tomorrow, where the Lightning are going to be taking on the Leafs, baby.
Well, let's break down this first round matchup as the Lightning. We knew for a while the Lightning were going to be taking on the Leafs. Basically, 3 weeks ago, we've known that they were going to be taking on the Leafs. So
we knew since 3 weeks into the season.
You're not wrong. It's been
almost
a while.
A lock for about 3 months, and it was for sure, set in stone almost 3 weeks ago. This has been a matchup been able to look forward to since I want to say even before the All-Star break, where it looked like that was the only possibility.
I believe they were, somebody said, I can't remember where I saw this, but they were saying that I think the Lightning and the Leafs were in the same spot or they only changed out of the second and third spot like 2 times the entire regular. Like they were basically in that exact spot the entire way through. It got close a little bit, but as you guys were saying, it was basically 3 weeks in the regular season. We already knew the Lightning would be facing off against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And of course, this is a repeat matchup from last year as the Lightning beat the Leafs in 7 games in that series. But it wasn't exactly the easiest run the Lightning ever had in the first round. He had to win it in overtime at home in Game 6 to extend the series to 7 games. And then thank to our great Nick Paul for coming through in the clutch, scoring 2 huge goals in Toronto and giving the Lightning the win in that series. Before we start breaking down the nitty-gritty, guys, let me ask you this. What are your overall, before the series starts, feelings about facing off the Toronto Maple Leafs here before Game 1 even gets underway?
Cautiously optimistic, like Joe said last week. We've kind of a unique circumstance with how long that we've pretty much known that these two teams are going to be playing each other on both sides. They've been able to, study film and study their opponent and pretty much plan on who they are going to play. So it's definitely a unique situation comparing it to some of the other teams in the playoffs who had to wait till the final day of the season to know who they're going to be matched up against. So it's going to be pretty tight. It honestly could go either way, but I know we're going to touch on it a little bit later. But man, I'm never going to bet against my guys. I'm nervous, but I'm completely confident the Lightning can do it.
Yeah, I actually am coming into this with a significant amount of enthusiasm. I think that the Lightning have had a lot of time this, in the later part of this season where they weren't really playing hard. They didn't really have to play hard in order to sustain their spot. And, they've gotten a little bit of rest here since their last game. And I think they're going to come out absolutely flying. And, I'm really excited to see what transpires in, these next 2 games. Because I think that's, it's going to be a big deal what happens in these first 2 to determine what happens for the rest of the series.
So, for those that don't know, here's a quick breakdown of the schedule for this 7-game series. Of course, it's starting off in Toronto as the Leafs are the higher seed with game 1 and game 2 on Tuesday and Thursday, respectively. Game 1 is a 7:30 p.m. Eastern start, and then game 2 is a 7 p.m. Eastern start. And then the Lightning come back home for their 2 home games on Saturday and Monday. And then, of course, one of the games at 7 p.m. and the second game, game 4, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And then the Lightning actually have 2 days off until game 5, which is in Toronto. Time is to be determined. And then game 6 is on Saturday at Amalie Arena. Time, again, to be determined. And then the game 7, if need be, would be actually on May 1st on Monday in Toronto with the time to be determined as of right now. So, hey, no back-to-backs for the Lightning. So a round of applause to the NHL for no back-to-backs. Matt, I know you're wanting to say something here. What you got for me?
The 2 days off is really nice. Thank you, NHL schedule makers. But again, the NHL schedule makers love to cater to the Leafs. It's 2 days off for the next home game for the Leafs. So I don't know. I'm not big on that. I don't necessarily agree with that. You know, if it helps the Leafs having those 2 days off, they can stay at home. The Lightning are going to have, you know, one extra day of rest, I guess, but I think they're going to try to get the travel out of the way. I don't know. I'm not saying it's unfair. That's a little cheesy to say, but I do think it's a little bit catering to the Leafs. You know me and my schedule maker.
If they need a game 5, you know.
Yeah, we won't.
We would need to get to game 5. I will say this, though. I do think it actually helps the Lightning in this regard in Tanner Jeannot's spot in the lineup because, as we all know, Tanner Jeannot got hurt earlier in the season, and we all thought it was going to be a pretty serious injury. And to our surprise, he's already back on the ice and practicing, and he's not like he's wearing a red no contact jersey. He's full practicing, and he could be back very, very soon. John Cooper did officially say that he would not be playing in game 1, but essentially he went from being week to week to now just day to day. So when he's going to be back, we don't know just quite yet, but it looks like Jeannot's getting a lot closer than we thought he was going to be. And with that 2-day gap, Matt, you know, maybe Jeannot gets in a little bit earlier than he would have if there was just that 1-day gap. I don't know that for sure, but I do think that works in the Lightning's favor a little bit.
I appreciate you, bringing the tone down a little bit and bringing some optimism into it. So thank you, Jake. That makes me feel a little bit better.
That's what I'm here for.
That'll be really big having Jeannot back and, quite literally as well, the size that he adds and the physicality. We saw, we're doing a little bit of a pregame, or a pre-show talk, like we're not going to do full-on recaps, but I kind of have to talk about the last game that we saw them play, against Toronto. It was very much message sending, lots of fights and scrums, and I don't have the stats pulled up from that game, but I want to say there was at least 2 or 3 fights, multiple scrums after the whistle. It was, again, just message sending, and Jeannot hits really, really hard, and he is definitely one of the top fighters in the entire league. So with him coming back, if they're going to keep up that physicality, the Lightning are keeping up the physicality throughout the series, what he brings to the ice in that regard is second to none on the team.
I think it'd be really interesting. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. It still is a possibility he might not play in the series, depending on how these games go. But if he does, make his way into the lineup sometime in the series, I would love to see him versus Schenn. I love Luke Schenn. I have before he was a member of the Lightning, and even after he departed, I have a huge amount of respect for Luke Schenn. And that Pat Maroon fight with him, Schenn got the better of him, but I'd say Jeannot is probably, objectively a much better fighter than Pat Maroon. I'd love to see those two go at each other, man. That would be a good Tilly.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some physicality. We saw that, I think, in last year's playoffs. But, Joe, you were talking about the last game the Lightning played against the Leafs. Let's look at all 3 of them they played as a whole. It's actually than they normally play. Usually you play 4 games against your divisional opponents, but a little different for the NHL this year. So the Lightning played the Leafs 3 times and they won 1 of those games. Now, it was kind of weird also the way these were scheduled, as the Lightning played the Leafs twice back in December, and then they didn't play them until just a couple of weeks ago. So really, Lightning and Leafs have never seen each other at 100% normal strength, if you will, at all this season, because the 2 times back in December was before the trade deadline, and the Leafs made a lot of major changes at the deadline. And then, of course, the Lightning didn't have a couple of their new pieces, such as Tanner Jeannot and Eyssimont. And then even in that game, the last one, the most recent one, you had a lot of these stars sitting out, especially on the Toronto side. And of course, Jeannot was not in that game because of the injury. So let me ask you guys this. Do you read into anything from any of these 3 games that the Lightning played against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the regular season?
Easily no. That last game was missing Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, Mark Giordano, Samsonov, Gustafsson. They were missing some pretty big names on their team. So I don't think that, is a complete preview for the playoffs here. It wasn't a preview by any means, and it wasn't an opportunity for a feeling out. So these are going to be 2 teams that are relatively fresh and unfamiliar with each other, which is a big rarity, actually, and might actually be something that's also pretty neat for these playoffs to have teams that don't really know each other very well.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. I really don't think they don't matter. Those games in December might as well be preseason games. But I do put a little bit of stock into the most recent game, the Tuesday game. Not anything, they weren't studying tape or anything like that, learning their opponent. But I think it was message sending. It was, roughing the guys up and letting them know they're going to be in for a tough series. So, no, I don't think we really learned anything or, put too much stock into any of the games. But I do think that it was a little bit of tone setting. I do think that just letting them know, don't be messing around.
I think a lot of Lightning fans were concerned because of that most recent game, because they were sitting there watching that saying, well, we can't even beat Toronto, and they don't even have half of their top guys in their lineup. But here's what I have to say. Those games don't matter. The whole entire regular season doesn't matter. This is the playoffs. It's a whole entirely different beast. The Lightning completely desensitized us from the regular season ever since 2019. And who knows, the Bruins could be heading for that same fate once again as they get set for their playoff series. But the regular season doesn't mean anything. The goal at the end of the day is just get into the playoffs. If you get into the playoffs, you have done what you were supposed to do, and now you have to be ready for basically anything, getting into the postseason.
You took the words out of my mouth, Jake. It's no secret, but the MO for the Lightning at the very least, and some other teams, but 100% for the Lightning is we don't care how we get there, but as long as we get to the playoffs, that's all we care about. We can be wild card too. As long as we're in, we're good. So
they've done it for the last 3 years.
That's
and
been
they've
their
made
approach.
it to the Stanley Cup Finals every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they coasted in, but if anybody in the league is just as good at coasting into the playoffs and just easing their way in and then flipping that switch once game 1 starts, maybe not last year. Game 1 was kind of rough, but yeah, just get in has been their MO for 3 years.
I'd even argue that it's been longer than that. 18-19 was obviously a year where they were dominating, but a lot of the wins that they had, they didn't really try very hard for some of those games, and they just outscore the other team with 20 minutes left in the game and get quite a few of those wins. They've been having this get into the playoff mentality for a long time, and they've found out how to make it work in the playoffs now too.
Well, let's break down these 2 teams, maybe offensively and defensively, maybe look at the goaltending and see if we can't figure out, where are the advantages, what do the Lightning need to do, and ultimately to get the win in round number 1. And let's start with the offense. Now, guys, I think you would agree with me, but most people would probably say Well, maybe not. On paper, a lot of people are saying, the Leafs have a lot of talent right now. And, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, even Samsonov is kind of playing. He's had somewhat of a better season than Vasilevsky just because he hasn't been himself this year. But there's a lot of talent on that offense for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the Lightning have a ton themselves. Who do you see as having the advantage when it comes to the offensive side of the puck?
I'll never bet against our guys, like I said earlier, but I think the Maple Leafs, at least in their forward core, are a deeper team. But I will say that I think the Lightning's top six does look a little bit better on paper and in practice. I mean, it's hard to argue who you would rather have. I mean, you can make an argument for either side, but personally, with my lightning blue tinted glasses, it's hard to turn Stamkos, Point, Kucherov against it's hard to turn them down against Matthews, Tavares, Marner. You can throw Nylander in there as well. But I don't know. I think the Lightning's top six looks a little bit better, and I do have a little bit more faith in them. But I will say Toronto's bottom six has a little bit more of a scoring touch. But at the same time, this is playoff hockey we're talking about. You need some physicality. You need some grit. Scoring will not, having four offensive lines doesn't always do the trick. So I think the Lightning have the right setup for playoff hockey.
And we've said, do we think that home ice advantage? How much does that really matter? And it matters a lot when you're looking at matchups. And I think that a lot of the performances that we'll see out of both top lines are going to depend on who they're matched up against. And I also know that, without a doubt, Coop is going to change the lines. He's going to change the line significantly depending on how these matchups end up going. So it's hard to know what the actual strategy is going to end up looking like for the Lightning, because we haven't seen Hagel, Point, and Kucherov be consistently aligned for the second part of the season, and I think a lot of that is putting a shutdown line more together, where you put Hagel with Killorn and maybe with Stamkos, or we've seen a bunch of different variants
How
of
about
that.
Eastimont?
Yeah, I mean, you could have him up if he's flying, and he's been looking really good the final games of the season. But the point being is that if depending on what you consider doing well as one of those top six lines, is it purely just goal scoring? Because I mean, we can put a lineup out there that'll put up 6 goals. The trouble is they might allow 7 if they're not matched up properly. So really, this is the one. People say that plus minus is a useless stat, and it's one that I do quote decently often, because it shows you a little bit of not fully, but how are they doing as a whole, on both sides of the puck. I think that Austin Matthews is extreme, and Mitch Marner for that matter, is extremely difficult to contain those guys. And I'd rather see less offense out of the Lightning and have those guys not be able to touch the puck or get stripped when they do, than just sheer go for scoring. Because I don't know that that's a game that the Lightning end up winning if they're just trying to put up points.
So I have a question for you. Who do you think their main target is to shut down? Do you think it is Marner or Matthews? Because to me, of course, Matthews gets all the hype. He's a 60-goal scorer last year. But to me, Marner is a little bit more of a dynamic player. He's faster, and he's a two-way forward as well. His defensive game is also very, very underrated, despite him being a Toronto player. But I do probably assume that they pay more attention to Marner this year. I think they were pretty heavy on Matthews last year, and he still managed to escape a little bit and pot some goals past Vazzy. But I do think they're going to target Marner just a little bit more defensively. And I think there's probably going to be a Braden Point or an Anthony Cirelli that's going to be the main guy that's going to try to neutralize him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty fair point. I believe that Marner and Matthews have been playing together for most of the season, though, right?
Yeah.
I haven't watched every single game to see. I'm just trying to briefly scroll through some stats to see if I can find anything that's consistent. But they're going to be out there together, and Matthews is a guy that can be. He can have magic hands and dance around guys. His ability to pull the puck to shoot, change shooting angles is ridiculous. So he's much more of a threat when it comes to actually having possession in the offensive zone, where Marner's got a lot of speed, and he's somebody that can burn you in the neutral zone in order to set up a play that will translate into a goal. So it's kind of two different types of players, and you have to treat them both differently in order to get full containment on them. Like, you can't give Matthews an inch. And with Marner, if you are if you're on top of him without the puck, there's a chance that he can get away from you, right? So you kind of got to have more space and gap control on someone like that. It's a difference of, again, getting our matchups right to be able to control and contain both of them, because we've seen in the past, if you well, look at that game that the Lightning played against Montreal, where on the power play they had one guy having a tea party with Kucherov down in the corner, completely away, making it a 4-on-3. Isolating one guy doesn't necessarily make for a better play.
Yeah, you have to be ready to shut down both of the players. And I know that's the obvious answer, but look at the Lightning for so many years. People would go try to shut down Kucherov, and hey, look, there's Stamkos on the other side who's wide open for an easy goal. It's a common problem that other teams will face when they're going up against a team with so many superstars. To me, you look at Mitch Marner, he's kind of like the Kucherov of the Maple Leafs. He's got all the points, a lot of assists. And then Austin Matthews is maybe more like the Braden Point. He's scoring a lot more of the goals this year. Speaking of Braden Point, by the way, 51 goals he ends up on the season. So a big round of applause to Braden Point.
Pop quiz. How many of those 50 goals were empty net goals?
One.
I was just going to say that only one empty net goal, and that empty net goal was the 51st goal. So all the way up till 50, no empty net. And by the way, shout out to
impressive.
John Cooper, who was the one who originally pointed that out. Our guy John Cooper, the stats guy.
That really is massively impressive. I'd love to pull up and see if I can do it here quickly while we're talking. But guys that are prolific goal scorers don't usually hesitate to put the puck in the net. Ovechkin being the prime example, and I can't spell and type at the exact same time. I just OVE.
Braden Point, I think he had a couple chances at some empty net goals, but there were just some circumstances where he was never able to get close enough to even take the shot. But I think he did, because I remember there was the one game, I think he ended up giving it to Brandon Hagel because Point kind of got converged on and he couldn't really get the puck out, but he was definitely going for that empty netter if he could get it. It just worked out that way.
And I don't think Braden Point plays in many empty net situations, at least for the opposing team. He really isn't out there all that much. So I think it was a little bit of a clever craftiness by John Cooper in that specific scenario.
Yeah, I'm not great at. Can you guys throw out another stat site, except for that's not the NHL.com?
Hockey Reference.
I will say this too, while Joe's looking that up too. We also have to give a shout out to Brandon Hagel, who hit 30 goals this year. So super excited for him because not to toot my own horn, but I did say Brandon Hagel is scoring 30 goals this year. But so I'm really happy for him. And I think he's going to be a huge piece in this Toronto series because, last year Hagel wasn't able to do too much. I think he had a couple of points in the series, but he just kind of was never able to get acclimated, if you will, in the Lightning system and wasn't a huge impact. Nick Paul was, but Brandon Hagel wasn't. This year, Brandon Hagel is having a fantastic season, and he could be one of those guys, that sneaks up in there and is able to make a big difference for the Lightning. Maybe he is the Nick Paul this year that makes a big impact in one of the games and steals one for the Lightning.
That would be great. I mean, a lot of people do forget, it wasn't a pretty goal, but the Game 6 overtime winner from Braden Point, it was kind of a scramble play. But I will say that Brandon Hagel did a lot of legwork on that one specific play after Matthews' hilarious falling and turning the puck over. It was Hagel that made the play, and he got the assist on that overtime winner. I was going to ask this question a little bit later, but I guess I can right now. But I was going to ask, who do you think that the Lightning's X factor might be? personally, I don't think it might. I don't think it will be Hagel. I think he'll have a strong series. I don't want to go too off topic if Joe's going to bring up a relevant stat to our previous conversation.
I think he got most of them at the beginning of the season, but Ovi had 6 empty net goals in order to get his 42 for the season. It was lower than I actually anticipated because it seemed like he had so many right at the beginning of the season, and then he tapered off a bit. But X factor for the Lightning.
I'm not going offense. I'm going defense. And my X factor is going to be Nick Perbix. And let me tell you why. Because listen, a lot of people are not looking at guys like Nick Perbix and even Darren Radish for that matter. And they are guys that could step up big defensively and shut down some of Toronto's guys. And if they're able to do that, that's going to give the Lightning a huge advantage. So I know it's kind of a weird one to pick when it comes to X factors, but if Nick Perbix is able to step up big defensively like he has for majority of the season, I think that's going to give the Lightning a real advantage because a lot of people aren't going to be expecting him to do much.
I like where you're coming from, Jake. It is a very unique point of view. I'm going to stick with you on the defensive side, but a little bit less of a hot take, if you will, kind of a freezing cold take. But I think Victor Hedman, he's had a little bit of a lackluster year, not quite up to his standards or the team standards. But I do think that, just like everybody else on the team, come playoff time, the switch flips. And I think Victor Hedman is going to probably take the brunt and be a key contributor throughout the whole series, especially when you consider that this is a little bit galaxy braining it, but Sergachev, he's had a great season, setting career highs earlier in the season, but he just had his child. He's probably going to be a little low on sleep. I think somebody needs to kind of step up and take that number 1 spot from him.
Sergachev's going to have that dad strength. He's going to be ready to go.
I think so. I think he's going to have the dad strength. He's got a strong family to come in and make sure that all the daddy, or I guess the baby duties are being taken care of. I don't think that's going to slow him down too much. And I do think that Sergachev on the defensive end can definitely be an X factor, especially, there's so much energy that comes out of off the ice when when Sergachev specifically scores a goal. For some reason, it just seems like it's much more impactful for the team morale than if Braden Point does, for instance. You almost expect it, and then when Sergachev scores, everyone you can definitely see the next shift where they perform a little bit better, but. I don't know if this is an X factor. I'll say this: my person isn't an X factor guy, but somebody I'm expecting to see outperform his regular season is Ross Colton. Ross Colton he's had 16 goals this season, and we remember how hot we were saying that Nick Paul was at towards the beginning of the season, really before Cirelli came back. Paul has 17 goals on the season. They both have 32 points between Colton and Paul there. I think that Ross Colton also has the best left-handed one-timer on the team for all of our forwards.
Kucherov?
No, not even close.
What?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Kucherov, Kucherov is able to do magical things when it comes to his shot. It's very deceptive. But also when he's trying to fire his one-timer, if you notice, he tends to keep it too low on the ice, and he ends up missing corners, and the velocity is not even near what it is for Ross Colton. Ross Colton can shoot that thing much harder than Sergachev does on the one-timer when he's on the right circle there. The thing is that's Kucherov's spot. So Colton doesn't get as many opportunities.
After this show, I'm going to send you a link to all of Nikita Kucherov's 39 goals from the 2016-17 season, and about 38 of them were rocket one-timers. Joe, all I'm saying is
they're not not top corner. All right, we'll do it. And I will absolutely concede if you send me a convincing argument, but if you look at what Ross Colton is starting to add to his toolbox here, I think that he's somebody that is due. And he's not playing poorly. He just has had, it's been a mix-up of line mates, and he's not playing with the strongest players. He's not playing with, someone like Yanni Gord, who's digging and giving him a puck for him to finish on. so it's been a little bit of a weird season for him. But I think once playoff time comes, he's somebody that 100% knows what it takes in the Stanley Cup Finals here to put it all out on the ice. And I think you see him play significantly better than he did in this regular season.
The bottom line is one of these guys is going to need to get hot for the Lightning to try and make a difference in this series. But speaking of getting hot, you know what else you can get hot off the press right now? Just head over to shop.rblrsports.com and check out the awesome new merch that we have over there for you guys. We got Rays Lightning, our Rowdies inspired merch over on there, especially the new Rays one that we've got, the Boots on Arms Cross, which I absolutely love. So don't forget to head over to shop.rblrsports.com and use code BOLTS for 10% off of your order. I think you guys saw that one coming and were ready for it. So
I did, but it was very, very good, Jake. I could see it, but it was very good. Hot off the press. That was terrific.
I honestly wasn't ready for it. I liked it. I liked it.
Well, we've talked a lot about offense, and we have mentioned some of the defensive sides, but I want to focus on maybe the goaltending for both of these teams. Now, we all know Andrei Vasilevsky is the best goaltender in the NHL. He hasn't had the best regular season compared to some recent years, maybe, although if you look at his stats, they're actually pretty similar to what they've always been, but the eye test tells you he's not been himself, especially as of late. And for Toronto, they've lost their backup goaltender, and Samsonov, it's been playing really well. So who do you guys seeing as having the advantage here? Is it still Andrei Vasilevsky no matter how bad he's been playing, or do you think that there's maybe a closer, it's not as big of an advantage as we all think it is?
Jake,
go ahead. Go for it, Matt.
Jake, I really do respect you, and I like the saying is there's no bad questions. But man, you're comparing Vasilevsky to Ilya Samsonov.
Hey man, I'm just trying to get the conversation rolling. I'm not saying that.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time. But to me, it's no question. Like I've said about every other player on this team, the switch flips, and there's nobody like playoff Vasilevsky. I really hope I'm not jinxing anything, but we've said it for 3 years straight now. There's nobody like playoff Vasilevsky. To me, that is the obvious X factor in the series. Both the defenses and offenses on both teams look, very comparable to each other, but the goaltending really is a difference maker. And despite Ilya Samsonov having a terrific year with Toronto, he's a little bit injured right now. I know he's been kind of in and out of the lineup. A lot of it has been precautionary, but a lot of it has also been, just basic injury stuff throughout the course of the season. So I think goaltender health might play a big factor into it. And who is, knocking on wood here, who is more durable than Vasilevsky? So I think the edge goes heavily towards Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 3 consecutive Stanley Cup appearances, and Vasi played every single game for those playoff runs. The amount of experience that he has is, we'll have to, again, a stat thing. I'll see if I can do it. But is there anybody else that has as much experience as him right now? That's there might be like 6 goaltenders in the league that have anything close. Like Quick might have as many.
Yeah,
playoff games.
Price isn't technically retired yet, but
he's
still
not playing though.
But he's not in the playoffs. No, I think Vasilevsky takes the cake on this, just because he's been to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals. All the Lightning players have more playoff experience than basically anybody playing this year because they've been to so many finals in a row.
And on top of that, that goes for the entire team too, right? And with
Exactly.
and in terms of goalie matchup, we've got a total of 8 games played, for Washington, and that's nothing compared to the experience of going all the way multiple times. So I think that does play a big factor. We've talked and maybe even downplayed a bit that there's a lot of pressure on Toronto to finally exit the first round, but that pressure is real, and the Toronto media is brutal. So as a goaltender that that you've been banged up a little bit, even if you have had decent numbers throughout the entire season, that's still a big question mark in my opinion.
Our producer Eureka just sent us a stat over it. Fleury 167, I believe this is playoff games. Vasi 104 and Quick 92. So Marc-Andre Fleury, which makes sense. He's been in the league for a very long time, has some more playoff experience, if you will. But Vasilevsky, the more recent playoff experience, as he's been to those 3 straight finals, as we mentioned.
The craziest part about that is Vazzy's about 10 years younger than both the other 2 goaltenders on that list.
Exactly.
That is incredible when you think about it.
He's on pace to break a lot of goaltender records if he plays for as long as these other guys have continued to play. If he does that, he'll break records. He'll be up there just like these other guys, no question about it. I want to talk about special teams as well, guys, because I think that's another big factor in the playoffs. As you all know, everybody always says that, they call things a lot tighter in the postseason. Whether or not that's true, it depends on who you ask. But when it comes to special teams, the Leafs actually are ahead of the Lightning when it comes to power play percentage by like 0.2%. It's very, very close. Do you guys see an advantage for either team when it comes to special teams? To give the exact numbers, Toronto was 26% on the power play. The Lightning were 25.4%. And then when it comes to the penalty kill, both the Lightning and the Leafs were actually kind of just okay. The Lightning at 79.7% and the Leafs at 81.9%. So pretty even numbers when you look at it from a statistical point of view.
So here's the other stat. And by the way, Eureka, thanks for throwing that information up so quickly. Maybe you can pull this up, Jake, since you're right there. If the power plays percentages and penalty kill percentages are fairly equal, how many penalties per game? What's the penalties per game difference between the 2 teams? Because the Lightning have been extremely undisciplined for the majority of this season. You guys haven't liked some of the calls that have gone against the Lightning, which I understand absolutely, but kind of as the saying goes, don't give him an opportunity, don't give him a chance. If you don't get your stick into a guy's feet, he doesn't have a chance to dive for a call. If you don't slash at somebody's hands or get your stick parallel, how often do we hear that as a deciding factor for it being a hooking call if your stick is parallel to the ice? Well, if you stop doing those sort of things, you won't give them a chance to get a power play to put your man in the box. And Eureka on the spot again with Tampa Bay, it's 4.55. I'm assuming those are penalty minutes, or maybe those are that seems low for penalty minutes. That's
per game.
Actual penalties, yeah.
I've got it up here too. So the Lightning are 4th in the league in penalties taken at 373, and then Toronto is 15th at 303.
And now that is where you'll see the big difference. You have to play more disciplined and not give the refs a chance to make a call. Yeah. So just don't give them a chance to make the call. And I do like, the odds from that point, because I know what the Lightning can do. If it's a wash, great. But if you're getting called, every couple of minutes, you're not only taking your top guys out of the play, but you're giving the other team too big of an opportunity.
I know I talked about Jeannot and Shen earlier being a potential cool matchup, but a matchup I'm really, really excited to see is Corey Perry and Michael Bunting. It's probably not going to end up in a fight, but it will end up in something nasty because both those guys have Corey Perry has a very, I wouldn't say cool temper to him, but he is very sly about getting under your skin. He'll just knock the goalie's water bottle off or something, or just gently poke you, just do small stuff to get under your skin. And Michael Bunting is a hothead. He is a motor mouth. The referees don't like him very much. The script with him has changed this year versus last year. He's getting a lot more penalties called versus penalties drawn this year. And Corey Perry, let's call a spade. He is I'm not even a worm. He's the worm. But he also has a rapport with the refs. The refs really do like him. They respect him as a player. And I think he does get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And I do think the refs pick on Michael Bunting just a little bit more this year because he has a reputation. But I'm very excited to see how both of those players, not perform offensively, but perform after the whistle and between whistles, and how they're going to interact with each other and maybe other players on the team. But I think that could be a key difference in the power plays this series. I think Michael Bunting might. I'm not going to say he might cost his team a couple power play goals against or something like that, but if he doesn't relax and cool his game down, that might be the case there.
I don't know how the refs are going to call it, because we saw in that last game in the regular season, even though, as we talked about, the regular season doesn't really mean what's going to happen in the playoffs, but the refs were just taking one guy at a time and they were calling anybody. And I don't know if that'll continue in the first couple of games here, but the Lightning take a lot of penalties. You're absolutely right, Matt. Bunting is a guy that will take a lot of penalties himself as well. So maybe that's something the Lightning can take advantage of and maybe try to bait Bunting into throwing a couple extra pushes, and he ends up in the box and the Lightning can take advantage of that. But I want to ask you guys about home ice and whether you think this is going to be a big factor in this series. Because I remember I said earlier this year that I think the Lightning need to go for home ice, and that's going to be a big help for them because they are a much better team at home. They finished under 500 on the road by the time the regular season ended. So my question to you guys is home ice going to make it or break it for the Lightning in this playoff series, because they do not have home ice in this one?
Go for it. Yeah, Matt, if you have an opinion on this one, go for it.
No, kind of goes back to just get in. I mean, this is a team that has played under crushing crowds at Scotiabank Arena, at Madison Square Garden, other venues where they have came out victorious. Of course, looking back at the COVID bubble where nobody had home ice advantage. It was a perfectly even playing field. Still didn't mess with the Lightning at all. I mean, it speaks volumes just to win one game in Madison Square Garden in the playoffs against even a weaker New York team. But I think the Lightning, despite what the record shows this year, I think come playoff time, doesn't matter. We know how to play. We know how to perform. I don't think it matters too much. Just goes back to just get in.
Yeah, and for that matter, I pretty much agree with you. I think I'm spot on with this group. They've done it so many times, played away so many times. If you want to look at the regular season, you said it yourself, Jake. You kind of throw everything away from the regular season here, but it's still hard for me to not think that it's a little bit easier for the matchups that you're looking for your schedule in general when you're at home. I think that it does play a difference. The home ice advantage is a thing, but I don't think it's something that they can't overcome. Just something that gives a little bit of a boost to Toronto, but not enough to sway the series necessarily.
All right, I think it's time to do some predictions and have a little bit of fun here. So let's go with your predictions for this series. Here's what we'll do. Instead of just doing the typical, who do we think is going to win and how many games, give me who you think is going to win, how many games, and who is going to score the game-winning goal for the team that you think is going to win.
All right. I'm going to go. It's hard to. I can't possibly go against our guys. I do think that they're going to win, and I think it's going to be Killer's goal in Game 7.
Ooh, bold! I like it. No, I'm right there with you. It's going to Game 7. I'm not sure who's going to win it for us. I think it's going to be an unlikely Game 7 hero, kind of like last year. Maybe not completely off the wall, but I'll say Captain Playoff Clutch, other than Braden Point. I say Anthony Cirelli sticking the dagger in him.
All right, for my prediction, I'm going Lightning in 4, and Andrei Vasilevsky is going to score the game-winning goal.
I love it. I love it.
Lightning in 3. Let's go.
Lightning in 3. No, all right. For real though, my prediction is Lightning in 7. I do think this is going to be a tough series for the Bolts. It's going to be a battle. I think they're going to have to steal one, away from home and then win their home games, and they'll be pretty much good to go. But I'm going to go with Brandon Hagel as my guy that's going to score the potential game winner here, because I said it. He's had a great season. I'm officially heading up the Brandon Hagel fan club. That's where I'm at now. I love this guy, and he's playing really well, and I think he could come through big for the Lightning in the playoffs. But It's going to be a close series, guys. I think it's going to be a fun one. There's a lot to look forward to. Let's jump around a little bit before we end the show on some of the other series. Any other matchups that you guys are looking forward to, especially the ones that the Lightning could potentially see as second round opponents if they are able to advance?
I'm more so, I don't know. I'm going to be watching a lot of the West games. Matchup I'm very, very polarized by is the Edmonton versus Los Angeles. I think that is going to be a hell of a series. I think it's going nothing short of 7 games and overtime. I have no idea who to pick. I would prefer LA, but that's going to be a matchup I really, really want to see. And as well as the Bruins and Panthers, despite, like you said earlier before the show, Jake, can't it just be a meteor that comes out on top? I mean, those are just two teams. Oh man, but I don't know. I'd love to see a 2019 and 2023. I think that'd be really funny, but it would come at the cost of the Panthers succeeding. So I don't know. It's those are just two matchups I'm really going to be paying close attention to, especially because the Bruins has future implications if the Lightning gets past the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, the as much as I love the Lightning, I'll probably end up watching that Bruins Panthers series as well, because I dislike the Bruins enough to root for little brother there. I mean, that's not one that I have a ton of hope, really. I mean, Bruins are just so damn good this season that it's going to be tough for anybody that goes against them. But I am looking forward to seeing the New Jersey, New York series to see how that goes. I think that one will be quite a bit of fun. I don't know that I'll necessarily stay up late enough for most of the West Coast games. With when they start going off every night here, but the Devils and Rangers is one that I think is kind of premier. They're both they're almost, I want to say it was like 103 to 102 points on the season, something along those lines. So it'll be, and they're so close to each other. I mean, you get to basically stay at home. I wonder if there's going to be any sort of home ice advantage outside for line changes with those crowds, because tickets are going to be, hundreds of dollars for nosebleeds, of course, and then it's but a train ride away to be at either place. So this is that'll be a fun one to watch as well.
I'm looking forward to the Seattle series because Seattle is a completely wild card type of team. They had a much better year than they did last year, and I think they could surprise some people against the defending Stanley Cup champions. Maybe it's because I'm salty that they beat us in the Stanley Cup, but who knows? I think Seattle could be a fun one to watch to see what they're able to do in their first postseason appearance. So a lot of fun matchup for the entire NHL in the postseason. But Joe,
you have to root for Yanni Gourde at.
There you go.
At any rate, absolutely. I mean, that's always. I mean, it's like a guy that you can't help but love. He always has a smile on his face, doesn't he?
He does. He's a guy that you want to root. So there you go. There's the best reason for me to root for Seattle. I want to see Yanni Gourde succeed because he is a fantastic player, no question about it.
Yeah, but in terms of the playoffs in general, with what to expect, it can always be just kind of a crapshoot trying to predict it. Kind of bringing it back to the Lightning. The bottom line is with the end of the regular season, it's time to see what this team is really made of. There haven't been stakes on the line for the Lightning for months now. It's been all but absolute that it would be a Leafs-Lightning matchup, and the Bolts were able to get away with coasting for much of the second half of the season. Now is when we get to see if they still retain the pedigree that allowed them to make 3 consecutive Stanley Cup final appearances, or if they're just pretenders this year. We can all sit here and make predictions, base them on the stats, the regular season, and intuition, but I don't think anyone has even a clue about what this team is going to bring to the ice. Only guys like Stammer, Cooch, Hedman, the core guys that have been there before, have any notion how much they've held back, how much they have in reserve, and how much they can amplify their play from here. And that's one thing I think we can certainly expect, amplified play. Faster skating, bigger hits, more emotions for every check, every pass, every goal. Here comes game one. Let's get hyped. Let's go, baby.
Joe, that was so beautifully said. I need to take that clip. That could be a hype video right there. I'm excited. I'm ready to go for the
playoffs.
The dichotomy of Joe entering the show and ending the show is massive. Oh my Lord.
It's going to be so much fun. Like you said, Joe, everything just means more now that the NHL playoffs are officially underway as of this recording, as the Islanders and Hurricanes are getting set, ready to go. But hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe right here on YouTube so you don't miss out on future episodes. You can also follow us on social media at RBLR Lightning, or if you want to follow the main account at RBLR Sports to check out all of the other fantastic podcasts we have for the Rowdies, the Bucks, and the Rays, who are off to a fantastic start, 14-2. So shout out to them as well. Don't forget to check out shop.rblrsports, and you can use code BOLT for 10% off your order. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.
Go Bolts!
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.